Welcome to the Hockey Writers Prospect Corner, a show with our top prospects writing crew, bringing you the latest news, analysis, scouting reports, mocks, rankings, and much more. From the World Juniors to the NHL Draft floor, from the farm to the NHL, our team covers everything that happens in the world of prospects. So sit back, grab a notebook, and get ready for Prospect Corner.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Prospect Corner here at the Hockey Writers. I'm your host, Matthew Zator, and as always, joined in by other prospect experts here at the Hockey Writers, Dayton Reimer and Peter Baracchini. Peter, how's it going? We're about days away from the playoffs. We've got the draft getting closer and closer by the day. How's it going?
Going great, yeah. I mean, coming from a Leafs perspective, we don't know what to expect in the playoffs, so I'm just going to keep that to myself. But excited that, we get to still talk about prospects and especially the new rankings from Central Scouting and Dayton. So,
yes.
Yeah, really excited to be here to still chat about something other than NHL.
Yeah, this is a rankings full episode. So, if you love rankings, come to the right episode here. Dayton, how's it going?
Oh, it's pretty good. Yeah, it's always a good day when you get to talk about rankings, especially when they're your own, right?
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, for sure. We've got lots to get through here, so let's get right into it. And talking about, like you said, Peter, the final rankings for NHL Central Scouting came out this morning, so we're right on the. Sometimes it works out that way. We record on the day stuff happens, so not a week from now, but. So that's good. We're going to talk about that. There's a few surprises that came out, not at the top. I mean, it pretty much stayed the same at the top of the rankings, but there are a few names that we're going to go through that kind of fell for some odd reason. But Peter, I'll start with you. Let's start with some fallers because those are the ones we always love talking about and debating. Why the heck did they fall so much? We'll start with the North American list here. Any names that popped out to you when you looked at it here that kind of inexplicable why they fell from the last ones?
Yeah, I'm just gonna name two off very quickly, and I one of them I'm kind of gonna save one name. We talk off the air, me and Dayton, about one name, but I think I'm gonna save the other one for him as well because I'm looking at it right now, and I think that's kind of up his wheelhouse. But I'm gonna say Cole Yzerman, dropping from 8th in the midterm ranking to 12th. Not that much of a steep fall, but it basically sums up what many have been talking about, including us here, where he's got the shot, he's got the power, he's got the offensive goal scoring abilities, but how far can that take you when you're just basically that one trick pony? He's got to develop more aspects to his game, especially his play away from the puck. Very, very uninspired. Not as fit with his size. You would like him to be physical, but he's very inconsistent when he's using that size to his advantage. So there's that. But the big one for me is Tanner Howe, from the Regina Pats, dropping from 29th to 41. Again, I really don't understand the whole issue with Howe because I'm one of his big fans right now. I really love his game. Obviously they didn't make the playoffs. It's a little bit disappointing. You didn't get to see more of him. Kind of tailed off with his production, but he's still above a point per game, 77 points in 68 games in a year without Connor Bedard. And the Regina Pats really weren't that great. So he was leading the pack, which is what you want to see from your best player and star player. And he was well clear of 25 points from the next player. So there's a sizable gap of how much he was carrying the offense on this team. And, maybe it's the size factor. Maybe it's the 5'10", 175. I think he's a great skater. I think he's got great energy. There's this NHL notebook about how he's modeling his game after Matthew Tkachuk and Brad Marchand, and who wouldn't want those kind of players on their team? So a little bit surprised to see him drop, another, 12 spots down. Really didn't expect that. I thought he would have maintained the same range in between that 25 to 30 range. But yeah, it just doesn't quite make sense to me for that. But other than that, those are the two that really stood out.
One thing about Tanner Howe is now that he's down in the 41, what does that make him potentially a second round pick?
Second, third.
Second, possibly. Third round pick. And we were talking about him in the first round. You know, and now he could potentially go later on.
Mhm.
And I think if that happens, that's a steal for whoever gets him. In a second round, even like you say, third round, it just would be insane. But I mean, there have been guys that have dropped because of their size. We've talked about it many times. Logan Stankoven, big one. And what is he doing right now? He's in the NHL, and he's not just doing okay. He's doing great. And we all anticipated that. But yeah, I think it's going to be another one of those. And, the team's going to benefit from it. Right, Dayton, over to you. Who have you seen on these rankings here that have fallen from the midterm ones?
Just before I get into that, I'm on Central Scouting's list here, and Tanner Howe is listed at 5'9.5".
Yeah.
On Elite Prospects, he's 5'11".
Mhm.
So
I don't.
Something's up.
I know he's undersized, but he's not that undersized.
Mhm.
I got questions.
That's why. That's why I picked that.
Yeah. I think he's definitely suffering from like the Connor Bedard effect, right? Regina was a fantastic show last year. This year, they are not. They struggled to string wins together and fell out of the playoffs, I think, pretty quickly, especially with some of the other powerhouses in Saskatchewan. So it's unfortunate for him to kind of take the hit, but someone else is going to benefit, just like someone did with Stankoven.
Yeah.
Yeah. So two guys jumped out at me. Both of them. Actually, no. Sorry. One of them's Western. One of them is not. First guy, Miguel Marquez or Marcus. He is with the Lethbridge Hurricanes. A similar situation to the Regina Pats. They weren't a very good team this year, and Marquez still had the team leading points, but in the playoffs, he just wasn't very strong. Kind of a liability. Got scratched twice. I didn't see anything about an injury, so it might have been a discipline issue. I'm not sure. I think that might not reflect very well on it. And yeah, pretty silent. And he and the Lethbridge Hurricanes got swept by the Moose Jaw Warriors, I believe. And he was just ineffective. So being a smaller player, he needed to have a really big playoffs, and he just didn't. And yeah, he dropped quite a ways. Because I think he was just on the edge of the first round, and now he's 53rd. Another small guy that caught my eye was Luke Misa, one of my favorites heading into the 2024 draft here. Such a great skater, such a great playmaker. Like, watching him is just a treat, I find. And he is now ranked. Oh, I got to get the number right here. It is way down there.
76.
76th. Yeah. For a second, I was like, is he in the 40s? No, 76th. He finished the season with 26 goals and 81 points to lead the Mississauga Steelheads. I know he's like 5'10", but that's really harsh.
Yeah.
The only reason I can think of why he fell so far was he wasn't amazing in the playoffs. Mississauga did get beat by, was it the Sudbury Wolves?
Sudbury, yeah.
Which was a very strong team. They still took it to 6 games. Mississauga did get hit with a couple of injuries, most notably Ryerson Leanders. Didn't he only played the first 2 games and then had to sit out for the rest, which that hurts. He was stellar in those first 2. And Misa, the top scorer on the team, was only putting up a goal and 2 assists. That's fine. That many points in 5 games. He did sit for 1. I think it was probably just a maintenance day. That's not bad. You want your guys to be at least approaching a point per game. But being a smaller player, just like with Marquez, he needed to have a big playoffs. He needed to take control, and he got surpassed by a couple of really young, really talented guys, especially on the first line, on the first pairing. No, not the first pairing, but the starting lineup. That's what I meant to say. And I think Central Scouting saw that and punished him for it, which doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that's quite a big drop. Wasn't he in the 40s in the midterm?
Yeah,
Yeah,
he was top 50.
yeah. He's in the top 50. Now he's into the 70s, and that now you're dropping into the third, fourth round range. And if he again, there's another guy. If he goes around there, that's a steal. Whoever gets him there, man.
100%.
That is ridiculous. I don't know. We'll be watching him where he goes. That's for sure. We've talked about him a lot on the show. I believe we talked about him last week, actually. But yeah, so those two, yeah, all those names, definite fallers, that not just little fallers of quite a bit. But I mean, Eiserman wasn't too much, but yeah, those ones pretty good. All right, over to the international side. I'll start with you, Dayton. Was there anyone that kind of stood out for you on the international list that dropped from the mid to the final here?
I mean, seeing Hellenius drop from first to third is a little surprising. Especially with who he was surpassed by. I think Ivan Demidov is a very good choice for first.
Mm-hmm.
And surpassing Hellenius, not a surprise. So if he dropped from 1 to 2, that's fine. Putting Anton Saleyev first overall, definitely a surprise. And I don't know if that was deserved over Hellenius. Hellenius is a really good, complete player. Like, he doesn't do things wrong. And in the top Finnish league, he had 36 points in 51 games, which is one of the best 18-year-old seasons ever. And I think that gets kind of downplayed because he is playing in a less, I guess, recognized league. When you talk about the top leagues, it's the KHL, it's the SHL, at least outside of the NHL, right? And the Liga does get forgotten maybe a little bit. At least that's kind of what it seems to me. But he's still doing crazy things while playing a very tight defensive game as well. So little surprised that he dropped even just that little bit. I thought maybe he'd at least stay 2.
Yeah, I mean, Saleyev's an amazing prospect. We've talked to quite a bit. And he goes to first. One that really surprised is well, I mean, it's not Faller, but okay, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. Well, I'll wait on that. I'll go over to you, Peter. Anyone that fell for you that was kind of interesting on the list between the two, midterm to final?
Yeah, he was kind of one of the surprises last time, Lucas Pettersson. He was at 10 and then he drops down to 16. I mean, a couple spots bumped down because considering what he was able to produce at the, J20 level in Sweden, he had 57 points in 44 games, which was absolutely phenomenal. Great two-way game, great shot, and everything like that. I'm curious to know why that sudden drop off, because I think maybe a spot or two, nothing major, but he jumped down 6 spots, which is still, not as bad, but it's still a little bit noticeable. I'm kind of curious as to what the issue was. Was it, his consistency? I read up on that, that can be the case sometimes where he isn't always at his best, and the effort goes shift to shift, game to game, and that's kind of like maybe that effort level is down, but you know what? Yeah, he can still produce, which is why he's still within that, late first, early second kind of range, which would make sense. But yeah, I think maybe if he was still in that like 12 to 13 range, it wouldn't be that big of an issue, but it's just a little bit further down. That's what kind of stood out for me as one of the fallers there. And yeah, I think maybe you may have been a little bit high last time, but no, I think maybe even with the drop, it still kind of like balances out because I think it's a pretty decent spot for him to be at.
Yeah, that's another interesting one for sure. Now, I mean, it's kind of hard to say with this next question, but Peter, was there anyone that you thought should have fallen from the midterm to the final that didn't, stay the same, or even rose up?
For international,
we'll start with we'll keep on but for both. I mean,
For
anyone that
both?
kind of stood out.
Sorry, repeat the question again. Someone that should have fallen, even though
That
they didn't.
that didn't fall from the mid to the final that you thought probably should have.
Yeah, I think maybe Aaron Kiviharu. I know there's still a lot of talk about that. I know he dropped one spot from 7 to 8. I think maybe he had a lot of promise coming in. I just maybe there's still a lot of question marks about his game being 5'9" on the back end. Like, is he able to handle himself a little bit more? Can he handle the physicality? Think him still being in the top 10 is still a little bit questionable in that sense. Then again, he still has a lot of upside. So if you're willing to take a swing on him in that range, or even as a first rounder, I'll go for it because he does have the potential, and there's still the possibility that he can grow. No question about that at all. As for on the North American side, I really tough because there was a lot of movement on the North American
Yeah.
side. I am very impressed that they were still managed to keep. I mean, Macklin Celebrini is number one, but the 2, 3, and 4 spot is still the same with Levshunov, Lindstrom, and Buyam. I like the fact that all those three are very consistent and still in that top range shows the kind of caliber players that they are in that sense. Instead of it being a negative, that's really a positive to those three players right there. So
Sure.
usually you see movement even from that 2 to 4 or 5 spot. But in that case, it's just really kind of funny that they're still in the same spot.
Yeah, there was no movement at the top, like I said. I mean, Celebrini definitely number one. I mean, one
Yeah.
Hobie Baker, the youngest ever to win it, right? That's pretty good. Dayton, was there anyone that you kind of thought should have fallen on either side there?
Most of the guys I thought should have fallen did. Yakimchuk took a couple of steps back. He went from, sorry, let me just pull it up here. He went from 6th to 11th. I think that maybe is still a little bit high. Like, he's a very talented offensive defenseman, but I'm sure I've said this before. I really question his decision making and his hockey sense.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's there, and that's something I think can be really tough to coach out of somebody.
Right.
Because you're making them essentially relearn the game, right? That's going to take a lot of work for him to overcome. Yeah. Adam Yeko in Edmonton. Hopefully I said that right. He took a couple of steps back. I almost maybe would have put him back a little further, but he's like, well, he's 6'5". You got to keep him in the top 30.
Yeah.
The Edmonton Oil Kings, once again, like Regina, like Lethbridge, not a good team this year. I think they finished. Well, I think they were bottom 3 of the WHL. They were a tough team, and he had 47 points, 23 goals. That's fine. I don't know. To me, that's nothing special. That's not a top 6 guarantee. He's just big, and so maybe he's a Tage Thompson, right? But he's not.
Yeah. And I don't think anyone's Tage Thompson. I mean,
Not yet.
not yet, not yet. I mean, Tage Thompson wasn't Tage Thompson when he started, right? Either. So, yeah, it depends. We'll see if it develops into that. All right, moving on to the risers. I mean, there were, like you said, a lot of movement on the North American side, so we'll start there. And I'll start with you, Peter. Anyone that rose on this list? Now, we said, the top end didn't move, but was there anyone else that you kind of saw take a big jump from between the two lists?
Yeah, one of them is definitely Michael Hage. Going from 19th to the top 10 spot, and that's just a tribute that just attributes to his whole entire season throughout the USHL. I mean, difficult season for him, definitely. Had an injury, coming in, really didn't have the best start to this season. But he progressed and got better throughout the whole entire season. And that's what you wanted to see, that steady progression. And he was dynamic in every sense of the way. He finished 4th in USHL points with 75, and he even had the 6th best point per game average. So that just shows how far he has come throughout the whole entire season to be in the top 5 or even top 4 or top 5 in scoring in, what the next best league that's developing, junior prospects. And that's great to see for Michael Hage, because I've been on his train as a first rounder from the very beginning. I even tweeted it, or I responded to like a point per game pace throughout the whole entire season for Hage. And I'm like, preseason 20, January 28th, kind of a bit of a fall, March 20th. You could expect to see Michael Hage rise up for me in my final rankings. The other one that really surprised me was Sam O'Reilly jumping from 40 to 24. Big jump. And you know what? I kind of see him as a 2nd round pick, but the fact that, his work ethic, his tenacity, his ability to be a factor down low, I think maybe may have solidified that. I think he finished top 3 in rookie scoring in the OHL. Fantastic, because at the beginning of the season, no one really had their eyes on him, but given how deep of a team that the London Knights were, they still needed players to do their part, step up, and produce. And he was definitely one of those players. Skating, not the best. It doesn't have great foot speed. Actual stride is not that great. Can be choppy. Doesn't have that much separation. But if he's able to improve on that, he's definitely going to improve his stock. If a team's willing to take him earlier, late first, or even high up in the 2nd round, the payoff is going to be big, because he definitely has a work ethic and the mindset to be a very strong 200-foot player. With great, and I think I read up on that he initially started off as a defenseman. So you see that defensive awareness kick in right away. So for him to have that above other players and other forwards in this draft class, that's a big bonus for him.
For sure. That was a pretty big jump. Now he's looking more like a 1st round pick than, borderline maybe 2nd, right? That's a pretty big jump for him. For sure. One guy, and I was just checking on where he was before, but I'm pretty sure he wasn't here. No, he wasn't. John Mustard. He's 27th on the list here, and I'm trying to find his name now on the mid, but he wasn't in the top 32. He's 41st. So we jumped into the first in the top 32 now. So that's a big. I love his name too. So so he's jumped into that top 32. That's pretty good. That one stood out right away. Dayton, anyone for you that you saw rise up over between the mid to the final?
Yeah. So, Merrick Vanacker. Is it Vanacker or Vanacker?
Vanacker.
Vanacker. Mm-hmm. Got it confused. I'm so good at this. Just make a compilation of every name that I mispronounce and then have to check again. Anyways, Merrick Vanacker with the Brantford Bulldogs had a pretty strong season. 36 goals, 82 points, 68 games. But in the midterm, he was 25th. So just kind of on that fringe 1st round pick, right? He has jumped up to 17th. And I think a lot of that has to do with how his playoffs went. I assume that Central Scouting is looking at some of this very recent data, because I think any scout should. He finished his playoffs with the most points of any undrafted player eliminated in the 1st round. So he had, of course, I don't have the number in front of me, but it was a lot. It was over a point per game. Give me a second. Yeah, 3 goals, 7.6 games. That's pretty good. He was, he's just become a very dynamic player, and he's really stepped up for a Brantford Bulldogs team that really needed somebody. And so I like seeing that. he was the point leader in the regular season as well, and that also helps that he finished so strong, led in goals. Yeah, there's a very interesting player there. Second one was a big jump. So Julius Mietinen with the Everett Silvertips was in the 40s in the midterm, actually almost 50. He was at 49. He is now 18th.
Oh,
that's a big jump. One of the biggest I could find, anyways. So he had 31 goals, 67 points in 66 games. That's a very strong finish. The Everett Silvertips, at least this year, have been a bit more on the defensive side. And having a player like Mietinen really gives them a punch and helped them get past that first round opponent against Vancouver, wasn't it? Was that against the Giants?
So I believe they played Everett first. Yeah.
Yeah, there are a couple of really good players on Everett right now. Ben Hemmerling had a ton of points this year. Austin Roast, Dominic Raimond, really, really good players. But Julius Mietinen has just been really, really consistent. And he's a bigger guy who can shoot the puck. He's one of the better goal scorers on Everett. And he's just continued to show why he is so strong and like a fringing on a first round consideration, at least definitely fringing on it now.
Yeah, that's a pretty big jump. I go jumping into the top 20 from the late 40s, right? Yeah, it's it must have impressed someone or a few people, I guess. There's not just one person on NHL Central Scouting. They got a team of people. So yeah, that's pretty big. We'll see where he actually goes. If any of the other NHL teams feel he's that good too. All right, on to the European list. Anyone for you, Dayton, that rose up there?
Well, I already kind of mentioned Salayev. I know he didn't jump a whole bunch, but going up to first overall, I thought was a little bit surprising. He is very good, and I think of anyone who's received the comparisons to Zdeno Chara, he's the closest. But he's not Zdeno Chara. Let's not cross wires here, right? He's a very good defenseman. Excuse me. And definitely has a great potential. But even NHL Central Scouting said he's not the most skilled. If you read the little blurb on the NHL.com page, they said Demidov is the most skilled European player and probably of the whole draft. So why is he not first?
And you can't make the Russian argument because they're both Russian.
They're both Russian. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not a bad pick, but I don't think it's a good pick. So that was a curious jump for me. Michael Brantzig-Nygaard, I think, also jumped up quite a bit. He is fifth now. I don't think he was that high before, but I'm blanking on. Was he sixth?
He was sixth, yeah.
Oh, so a little jump. I like that. He's a great player to watch. I love I think he's the most true power forward. Him and Liam Greentree have a really strong physicality to their game, but Brantzig-Nygaard more so. I think he's a bit more well-rounded, and I'm glad that he took that little extra step up, and that is good to see. I hope he goes in the top 15. That would be awesome.
Yeah, that'd be what, isn't the first Norwegian that would be drafted in the first round or for a long time? Yeah, that'd be pretty good. And he's going to be a first round pick. It just depends on where he's going to go.
Yeah.
All right, Peter, quickly, what anyone that kind of rose up for you for the international side?
Yeah, a pair of Swedish defensemen. First off is Alphonse Frey, jumping up from 23rd to 13th. So 2 spots up. Obviously, he's a very dynamic offensive defenseman. Underrated defensive game. I think there's, a lot of potential there. He's very raw because he can get over aggressive with his pinches and his reads, but the offensive game is outstanding of how he's able to compose himself on the back end, be a factor in transition, and even in the offensive zone. Very warranted of getting a massive bump up on the European side. And the other one is Noel Franzen, who was unranked in the midterm and is now 48th. So what the public scouts or the online scouts are seeing, Central Scouting is also seeing right now, because he is a speed demon for his size. I mean, he's 6 feet, 183 pounds, uses that well to his advantage. Great shooter, great passer. He's the full package on the back end right now. Offensively, again, defensive game still work in progress, but I like how aggressive he is offensively. I like how aggressive he is offensively, and he's just that aggressive defensively as well to, create that separation and regain possession. So those are two names that really stood out for me as risers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, going unranked to ranked and not low either. So that's pretty good. All right. Well, before we move on to the rest of our show here, got to remind everyone of our Substack here at the Hockey Writers, run by Dayton. As you do a great job, and we're going to be talking about your rankings as a part of that. So make sure checking all that out. Lots of content coming out as I know you keep doing that WHL journey as well, going through that. So lots of fun stuff over there at the Substack and the Draft Prospects one. We also got all the ones for the other NHL teams, hockey history, and news and rumors, a whole bunch of other stuff. So take a look at that in the link below. All right. Well, let's move on to, like aforementioned, rankings, Dayton's rankings. And Dayton, you put out a top 40 and a few weeks ago now? And it's on the premium Substack. So if you want to take a look at the complete list, you'll get a little preview here. We're going to go through his top 10 and stuff like that. But if you want to get the whole top 40, check out the link below and subscribe. You can also just do a free trial if you want to take a look at everything that we have at the Substack. But yeah, if you want to read the whole thing, you got to subscribe to the premium tier. And but without further ado, let's talk about your rankings, Dayton, and start with your top 5 and just go through your top 5 for us here.
Okay, so no surprises, I think, probably with the top 3. Macklin Celebrini is first because he is. There's no one else that's first. Anyone arguing that someone should be different isn't paying attention. Maybe that's a bit harsh, but I would say he's a unanimous first overall choice at this point.
Yeah.
Ivan Demidov second, the most skilled player according to Central Scouting. I think has some real high upside, and I know he's again a little on the smaller side, and there's the Russian factor, but you're not worried about that at the draft. You take the best player, or you're going to look silly, like everyone who took people ahead of Matvei Mechkov.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to happen. Don't do that. Third, Artem Levshunov. I think he is the most talented defenseman. I did a deep dive over on the premium Substack on why I think he has the skills to be the best overall defenseman, and given his right shot, I think that puts him as the top choice. Number 4, I went with Caden Lindstrom from the Medicine Hat Tigers. He has been battling injuries all season, which really sucks for him. I feel bad, but he has such dynamic skill. He's a big, speedy, skilled forward. He's got agility. He's got physicality. I think in the beginning of the season, he was ranked top 20 in hits, and also was one of the better scorers on the Tigers as well. And rounding out the top 5 is Berkeley Catton, who is a little smaller than everyone else mentioned, but just the silkiest skill I've seen in a prospect. I think he is a lock for the top 5. I would argue that he could even go higher. But at the point I published it, he was, I think, a really solid choice for 5th. Just oozes skill. He slips by guys. He's fast. He's just the best. I really like watching the clips of him. And it's just a really, really skilled player.
I love Berkeley Catton too, so I really liked him in the top 5 there. I have no issues with any of the 5 you've got in your top 5. So over to you, Peter. What do you think about that top five?
Yeah, no, fantastic top five. I obviously, because I've had Sam Dickinson in my top three as my top defender, I think you can make a case for any top defender in this class, be it Sam Dickinson, Anton Salayev, Artem Lifshunov. But I do agree in your assessment of Lifshunov, how the areas of improvement of him not being as aggressive and not being, you know, his decisions and reads have been much better in the second half than, you know, when I last saw him. And, you know, the run in the NCAA lately really showed that, like, he's a dominant force. And, you know, there is a good reason to suggest that he could be the top defender gone. There's no question about that. Everyone can have their own assessment of who's going to go first, but if it was Levshunov, totally understand about that because of what he's able to do, and being that, as you mentioned, that right-hand shot, that is a big difference maker compared to that of Sam Dickinson, who's a left-hand shot. So teams value right-handed shots because they're a rare commodity. Yeah, no, I think he really has solidified himself as a top five defenseman. Really has made his strides throughout the whole entire season. Again, maybe some doubts, but I am less calm now, seeing more of those games in the second half now in Lashunov than I did at the beginning of the season. And you can see the work and the difference from then. Caden Lindstrom, yeah, I agree. Fourth spot is pretty good. Would I like to have him top three? Absolutely. But I think also his play at the upcoming U18s, oh no, wait, he's not going to the U18s because he's still nursing an injury. So there's still that. Disappointed that he's not going to show up there because I thought he would have really dominated, but you know, it is what it is at this point. And yeah, Berkeley Catton 5. I mean, we've had like Sam Benson even in that spot before. Hopefully teams don't make the same mistake and pass on Berkeley Catton, because he is that game changing type of player that teams need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it doesn't matter how many times we say that they're not going to make the mistake again. Now that Zach Benson, Logan Stankoven, come on,
they will screw it up.
They will do it again.
Let him go to a very average team, and he will make everyone else look silly.
Watch him drop to a playoff contender.
To happen.
Oh, geez. Well,
right?
look at the Dallas Stars. I mean, Stankoven, Wyatt Johnston. I mean,
Maverick Bourque.
Like Johnston, what is he, a 35 goal scorer now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it just, yeah, it's interesting. I don't know how big Johnston is. I don't know if he's small, but I just saying about a guy that was not drafted very high and it goes to a playoff team, but I digress. All right, Dayton, let's keep us moving here. The 6 to 10, round out your top 10 here.
Yeah, so I went on a bit of a run with defensemen here. I started at 6 with Sam Dickinson. Like Peter, everything I watch of Sam Dickinson, I like him more. He is very well-rounded. He's got a great slap shot that the clips I found really reminded me of Shea Weber. It's just, he fires it off so fast and so strong. He's a great quarterback from the blue line. He's got good size. He's got good strength. And he's so calm. Like, everything he does looks like it's just not a big deal. And then he makes you look silly with crazy moves and agility and intelligence. And he's just not flustered. Nothing bothers him. The reason I put him below Levshunov was mainly his handedness. He is a left shot. And while that is usually not a problem, having such a skilled right shot defender is just that much more enticing. And so I think he's just on the outside of that top 5. He's so good. And playing on a very strong London Knights team is going to be great for some development in the playoffs. Number 7 is where I have Anton Salayev. I've already kind of made a bit of a case that he could be a new Chara. And like, he's not going to be Chara, but like maybe Chara light. Standing 6'7". He's playing already in the top Russian league in the KHL, which is impressive for any teenager. Like, they don't give 17-year-olds minutes. And he's playing upwards of 15 minutes a game, which is great. That's exactly what you want to see from a dominant player, especially a defenseman. He's got really good skating, especially for a big guy. and agility that I haven't seen in really tall players. Yeah, I think he's got a lot of really good potential, but I don't know if he's quite as well-rounded as Sam Dickinson or as Lev Shunov. Yeah, maybe a bit more on the defensive side.
Mhm.
And that is maybe what drew me to the Chara comparisons the most, is Chara was supposed to be a big shutdown defenseman until he wasn't, until he was a
Yeah.
Hall of Fame candidate. And that unfortunately happened right after he left Ottawa.
Yeah.
We won't get into that too much. Number 8, Constant Hellenius. I think he's a top 10 pick lock. He is so complete. He is one of the best teenagers to ever come out of the Liga, at least based on his draft year stats. Yeah, among under 20 players, he ranked second in points, and under U18s, he led the pack by 25 points, at least at the time of publication. He is again on the smaller side, but I found that he had more strength than Katten or Demidov. He's just not as dynamic.
Mhm.
And so I think a top 10 pick is a great place for him. But, you have to pick a guy who's going to potentially be a game changer for your team with a really high pick. And Constant Hellenius, I don't think is going to be a game changer. He's going to be a game smoother. Like, he's just going to make things better. He's just not going to change it, if that makes sense. Yeah. Number 9, Cole Eiserman. There's not a better goal scorer. He just doesn't have a well-rounded game at all. And at the point I wrote, I think he was still one of the better players to select. I could see him falling out of the top 10. I don't think it's likely, but I could see it.
Mhm.
And finally, number 10, Zeev Boyum. He really came alive at the World Juniors. He is such a dynamic defenseman. Another left shot, which explains why I placed him a little lower. The right shots are going to get more attention. And I think that's because they're more needed. You need a lot of high-end right shot defensemen in the NHL right now.
Mhm.
I also found that Boyum's defensive game needed a little bit of work. It wasn't bad. It's just I wanted to see a bit more. And I think it did improve from the beginning to the end of the season. And that helped get him an Hobie Baker nomination. But yeah, that's he's I think the leader of that next group of top end defensemen.
100%. And I mean, I love Boom. He's just such a watching at the World Juniors. He's just such a mature defenseman, and play for a gold medal team, winning team, at a draft eligible guy, playing with a whole bunch of guys that have been there for a couple of years already. I mean, well, he can be in the U18s too. So I mean, I don't know if he's going, but yeah, and he was really good at the upper level, and he'll be at the World Juniors again this coming season too. So yeah, I like him in the 10 spot for sure. Peter, what do you think about the rest of that top 10?
Yeah, no, I think the only one that I would consider maybe moving up a little bit more is Buyum. I think top 10 is very fair. I think maybe I would have moved him up like closer to maybe 6, 7, possibly in that range. And it's just mainly because of what he was able to do during that road to the NCAA championship. I mean, overall, in the season, I think he was the only defenseman to be top 10 in collegiate scoring, and he had 50 points. And I believe it was in one of those games, or there was a clip online where he cuts to where he's in transition, players coming in, cuts to the inside, walks in alone, sets up a goal, and he just made it look very, very simple. When you make plays like that at a young age, and even as like basically a freshman in college, and one of the biggest games of the year, you're not faced by that moment. You're going to go out there and you're going to dominate, and you're going to play your game the way you know how. And William knows how to do that offensively because he's very creative. He's very skilled. He's got that speed and mobility, which makes him that factor in transition and gaining access into the offensive zone. I think that's just the only thing where I would move William up. But other than that, yeah, that top 10 is near close to what I have as well.
Yeah, it's a pretty solid top 10. I think it's pretty consensus. I think a lot of rankings are all these guys are in the top 10. So, yeah, right there you go. We're not picking apart too much there.
I'm okay with that.
That's pretty good. All right, a couple quick final questions. Dayton, this is your first rankings doing these. What prospects were the toughest to place the first time here? I mean, it's just so many players and where to go. Who was the toughest to where you want to put them?
Yeah, there was a few. There was a group of players that I had a difficult time separating. And I was kind of like the high energy forwards, the wingers.
Mm-hmm.
So you can kind of throw in Tanner Howe in that, Ryder Ritchie, Andrew Basha, and even like TJ Ginla and Michael Branzig-Nygaard. I really struggled on where to place those that felt appropriate. I think of those, Ritchie was the hardest to place.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't know kind of where his upside lied. I thought he had kind of a disappointing season, and there was an injury that prevented him from reaching his full potential. I think he was much better in the playoffs, and so I would probably bump him up from where I had him initially. Yeah, and then there was a couple of Russian prospects. A lot of guys after the top 10 were difficult to place. I'm gonna be honest. And just based on the clips that were available to me.
Mm-hmm.
I had to go digging for some kind of unedited footage. I didn't want to just see highlights. I wanted to see how they actually played in everyday situations.
Yeah.
And so there was a few that I couldn't find, and that meant I just kind of bumped them to the bottom because they're good. I can see they're good, but I didn't know they were good.
Yeah.
And I think of that group, Dean Letourneau, the really big high school kid, I just couldn't find anything worth watching. He clearly has a lot of points, but what is he doing that makes him so good and maybe a first round consideration?
Yeah.
I'm always really hesitant to put high school kids in the first round. I don't like they're playing in a completely different situation. And if you're big, you win. And he's big, and so he wins. But is that actual skill or size? I don't know. So I think, yeah, those were probably the two toughest of the players that I looked at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always had problems with that when I couldn't see when I did my rankings a few seasons ago that you couldn't see, and it was really tough. So I went for other people's opinions. It's like, well, I think that, and yeah, it's really tough sometimes. And I think I know, Peter, you're probably the same way with the placing guys. All right, final question. I'm anticipating you're going to be doing one more rankings before the draft. So who do you anticipate rising or falling on your next set?
Yeah. I probably will try to sneak one out in June, just before the draft there. Kind of a last ditch ranking. I think Ritchie might jump up a little bit. I was really impressed with what he did, especially against the Saskatoon Blades, who are a very powerful team in the playoffs right now. And he kept the Raiders, the Prince Albert Raiders, competitive. He was their driving force there. So I wouldn't mind putting up a little bit higher. Maybe Tariq Prasic as well, another Western guy. The WHL has a lot of, and I know it's a phrase I overuse, but very interesting prospects. I think they have very good upside. They're putting up a lot of points. And yes, I do have a Western Hockey League bias. That's what I pay attention to the most. And we all have our biases, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Tariq Prasic, I think, could jump up a little bit. Prince George has just been unstoppable. Like, you can't get a goal by them almost. They just outscore you and outcontrol the puck. And Prasic has been right up there with their best players and I think that's really good to see, especially seeing where some of their other guys went. Riley Heidt being one of them. I think the final guy too will be Michael Haig. He was. I'm right on the bandwagon there with Peter. I wasn't as quick on it, but I got there. He is such a good skater, really, really talented. And I had him right in the middle, a little later in the draft. I won't reveal it because it's premium. But seeing how much he jumped up on the central scouting makes me want to go back and find some more recent clips and just see how much he has taken another step forward. And I wouldn't mind putting him above a couple of other guys.
Yeah. I mean, there's always changes before. I know, Peter, you're going to have one more out as well for your final. So yeah, lots of stuff still to kind of the U18s will make some determinations, I'm sure, where guys go. So yeah, it's still lots of stuff. I mean, the games are getting down to the wire where just the playoffs for a lot of these guys now. And then, I mean, all the NCAA stuff is done. 4s and 4, I believe, is over. Yes, it is. And the national championship, all that. So lots of stuff that's lots of NHL debuts have been actually happening lately. I mean, that's not draft, but yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where these guys kind of move. And we're still a couple months away from the draft, and actually 3 months, almost 3 months from May, June, 2.5. Yeah. Where are we? We're middle of April. So yeah, 2.5 months away from the draft. So lots of stuff can still happen. We got a couple events that could change things. We got the also the scout, the measurements and the, why can't I think of the name? The combine. There it is. Scouting combine. That one, that changes things too. So lots of fun stuff still to come.
Yep.
All right.
Are you sure, though, it's April? Because I'm looking outside and it's currently snowing in Saskatoon.
Oh God.
It is April. Oh my God. Yeah.
Welcome to Saskatchewan.
Yeah, we're finally getting sun. I've still got rain. The West Coast is just got rain.
Finally some nice spring weather over here. So I think Dayton's the only one where he would like better fortunes.
Yeah, right. All right, let's move to our prospects of the week here, and I'll start with you, Peter. And who do you got as your prospect of the week?
Yeah, my prospect of the week is the leading point getter in the WHL playoffs, and that is Columbus Blue Jackets first rounder in 2022, Denton Mateychuk. 14 points in 6 games. I mean, that's absolutely ridiculous for a defenseman. And this all comes off of his game 2 performance earlier this week, where he had 6 points against Swift Current. And they won 7-2. He was basically in on most of those goals. Just one goal he wasn't in on, and that absolutely is very impressive. Moose Jaw swept the Brandon Wheat Kings in the first round, so there was that. He was basically a point per game there, well above that actually. Didn't go pointless in that series, hasn't gone pointless in this series against Swift Current. Currently, they have not played a game yet because Eastern time, they're playing it later tonight, but I anticipate Mateychuk probably increasing his point totals and being a leader on the back end and still leading the league in scoring in the playoffs. So he is my prospect of the week.
That's a good one. Denton Mateychuk, we love him. I mean, I know we were gushing on him all throughout draft coverage when he was drafted. So yeah, the Blue Jackets getting him. And just speaking of the Blue Jackets, a quick shout out. Luca Del Bel scored his first NHL goal as we're recording here on his first shot in the NHL. So congratulations to him. That's awesome. Gavin Brindley is also playing in that game, his first NHL game too for the Blue Jackets. Two really good prospects. I know you liked Del Bel Peter, during his draft year. So yeah, congrats to him for getting his first goal really quickly here. So
Also,
big shout
Jackson
out.
Blake making his debut for the
Yes,
Canes
yeah.
as well.
And Bradley Nadeau as well,
Mhm.
too. So four NHL debuts in that Columbus Blue Jackets Carolina Hurricanes game. So when was the last time that happened? I don't know if it has. And so many
Four
debuts in
season
one game.
debuts. Yeah. It's kind of crazy, actually.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool. All right, Dayton, over to you. Who you got as a prospect of the week?
There's so many that I wanted to talk about, but I think I'm going to go with a goalie this time. Draft eligible. I mentioned him a little bit earlier. Ryerson Leenders. So he was so good in the 2 playoff games that he played. He had a .933 save percentage in 2 games, stopping an average of 22 shots per game. He also finished the OHL regular season with the highest save percentage in the league. This is, I think, one of the best goalies available in the draft. He's just been so consistent and so strong in net. And if he hadn't got injured, I think Mississauga would have had a really good chance at beating the Sudbury Wolves, because that's I think 2 of the closest games that they had. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, and they only got their first win with the backup goalie, Jack Ivankovic, in net. But yeah, I think with his invitation to the U18s, he will be going with Carter George. I wouldn't be surprised if he took over the starting role. He is just so good. I'm
very composed.
Yes. Yeah, just a fantastic presence in that. And I hope he is the first goalie off the board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's unfortunate that he got injured there because, he's a big part of that team. So, he will probably go high. I don't know if he'll be the first goaltender off the board. Probably will be. But yeah, we'll see. All right, my prospect of the week, and speaking of NHL debuts, it's going to be Lane Hudson. And everyone knows how much I love Lane Hudson. So I was happy to see him get play his first NHL game. Didn't score, but he got an assist. So he's got his first NHL point, and off a really good play. I mean, we all know how good he is at handling the puck and how great a skater he is. And he showcased that on his first NHL assist. Make a great move at the blue line, and then going down and getting I believe it was a shot, and then a rebound that Gallagher put away. But yeah, Hudson is he's already showcasing. He played really well against the Red Wings, didn't look out of place. And another undersized guy getting drafted later on, and that shouldn't have. And the Montreal Canadiens are benefiting. I think they're going to benefit from him, and highly anticipated NHL debut. So Lane Hudson is my prospect of the week. All right. Well, there's another episode of Prospect Corner here at the Hockey Writers. Thanks, Dayton. Thanks, Peter, for coming on again, talking prospects. And we're going to be back next week talking, I don't know, we'll talk maybe maybe we'll do a mock draft. We'll see. I don't know. We'll figure out what we want to do. But, lots of stuff that we can talk about. The under 18s are coming up, so maybe we'll do that. But make sure to check out all of our stuff at thehockeywriters.com, all of our the Substack. Dayton's got more stuff coming out on that front as well. So make sure you're checking that out. But until next time, we'll see you on another episode of Prospect Corner.